Hey everyone, Dr. Kuniak here, trying to do a video lecture for you. One of the things that I want to try to make sure I cover today is ethics as related to, or as it relates to research methodology. So let me share, see if this works for me. Let me share the 2014 Code of Ethics. So hopefully you can see that on your screen. So the Code of Ethics, typically we in most of our counseling programs, and certainly in this counseling program, we focus on sections A through D most of the time. Hopefully you can see my little mouse pointer. Section A, B, C, and D have to do a lot with the practice of counseling. And so, when we talk about the counseling relationship being a central, opportunity for change, confidentiality being, what is a major set of policies around our profession, our responsibilities, and our relationship with other professionals. This has to do with day-to-day practice, the stuff that we do all the time, the ways that we connect to, other folks that we work with, the ways we serve our clients. Section E here has to do with things that I cover in my assessment course. This somewhat relates to research methods, but this is more about assessment as it relates to interpretation of results and use in counseling. So we will refer to Section E somewhat in this class. Section F, supervision, training, and teaching. It's more stuff that I have to worry about as a supervisor and professor. But here we go. Section G, research and publication. There's only really one class other than ethics, maybe generally, but there's only maybe one class where we get into this specific section of the Code of Ethics, and that is this class. So let's go to page 15 and take a quick look at what we have. So yeah, section, there it is, G. So there are, in fact, responsibilities, ethical responsibilities that we have to keep in mind when we are gathering data and putting this towards research and publication. Similar, you're going to see some similar cross stuff here. There are aspects of confidentiality that we have to utilize when we're working with our clients in practice. Confidentiality also is, aligned with the work that we have to do as researchers. We try to avoid injury. You might ask yourself, and so I'm going to presume you are, how is it possible that in mental health related research, there's a possibility of having an injury? Well, a lot of the assessments that we utilize, a lot of the studies that we do, there's really not. But when you're doing an institutional review board application, an IRB application for for a future research study that you want to do, you have to identify if there's any possibility of harm to any of the participants. That has to be a part of the informed consent process, and you can't say that there's none. It's never that there is no risk of harm, because psychological harm is still harm. A, B, you don't know what's going to happen during the study. But realistically, it's possible that questions that you ask in a study may trigger someone in a way that you don't expect them to, and that can cause harm. So we take every possible, we take every possible, all of a sudden I have no words, opportunity to avoid causing harm to our research subjects, just like we would with our clients. But we have to own that. And so in an informed consent for a research study, you don't say there is none, there is no likelihood of harm. You say, we believe that the likelihood of harm is minimal or is none compared to any other activity that a person might be doing, or some phrasing like that, because the person has to be aware that it's unlikely, but it could happen. Additionally, sometimes we do studies that involve use of physical activity or something like that that might cause a person harm. So I'm familiar with some studies that were done in my undergrad program where students would do these student-run research research projects, and they would do things like, does music affect heart rate? And so they would have a control group of individuals who were listening to certain types of music while doing nothing else. And then they would have a certain group of individuals, or maybe they would do test retest and use the same individuals. That would probably be more reliable. And they would have them listen to music while they were on a treadmill or something like that, while they were on an elliptical machine and they were running. So in those cases, because you're manipulating a person's physical activity, there is a chance of harm. It's still low, it's still very low, but that's not going to be an exempt study by the IRB. We'll talk about this, but there are three levels to study: exempt, expedited, and full board reviews of the Institutional Review Board. Depending on what you're doing, it's definitely going to be an expedited review. It may be a full board review, depending on what you're making the person do. Um, a lot of responsibility falls on the principal researcher. They have their first line, their name as first in the line up on the study. So they get the most credit for the study, but they also have a lot of responsibility to oversee all of the comings and goings of the study. So making sure that anybody who's helping out with it is following directions, is following the plan, is acting in line with the approved IRB, whatever the case may be. Informed consent here again, just like we expect informed consent as part of our counseling process, we expect our research participants to be informed about, and I already mentioned it, what they can expect out of the study, what's the risk of harm, what's going to happen to their data. If you intend to, and I was just kind of doing this because I'm preparing a new IRB application. When I first started doing these, I would list on the informed consent that their data would just be used for this specific study. I'm starting to identify that it might be used for another study in the future because you never really know. And so as a result, it's better to make sure that you might get some really great data, or you might do another study down the road where you realize that this kind of connects to this other study that you did in the past. And so I think it's better to just inform the person that their data is going to be stored. It's going to be utilized for this specific study and its purposes, and it may be used for studies in the future, but you're going to ensure that all of their identifying information is expunged in the first place, so that if the data is used again, there's still no possibility of their confidentiality being breached or something like that. But you'll see, informed consent is really the longest um, policy within the Code of Ethics for research. There's a lot that goes into that. Folks need to know what they're getting into when they're completing a study for us. Client participation. So just because they're a client and they've been informed of your services as a counselor doesn't mean you can use, without their permission, experiences that you're having in the counseling session towards a case study or towards other studies. Um, person's not capable of giving informed consent. If you work with kids, technically they can't give their own consent. Now, that doesn't mean that you avoid it. We'll talk about this a bit when we talk about protected populations. The parents would have to give consent, but the child still has to give some sort of assent. Not consent, assent. They have to still agree. So the parents may do all of the legal consenting, but the child still has to agree to be willing to participate. And you can do that in different ways. They may not be able to read a full informed consent document, but maybe they can put an X over a smiley face or a frowny face on a card if they agree or disagree. And then we would retain that as their consent to this study. Yeah, we avoid boundary crossing with our participants. When I did my dissertation, I had two of my friends who were along with me, helping me as research aides, because it was a lot to manage, me going to another state, all these paper documents, trying to set up a table space at a convention, gathering this data from thousands of participants and keeping track of all of it. It was helpful to have a couple other people along with me. They couldn't actually complete the study though. I mean, they took study materials and tried it because they were curious, but that information got pulled out of I didn't include their packets in my full study, because that's a boundary cross. I can't have my research participants be individuals that I have a relationship with. So yeah, there's a lot. I mean, a lot of this, I think, as at least in my experience, as you think about it, it makes sense. But if you don't think about it, well, you would never consider, I guess. Um, I think it's important to note too, reporting errors, obligation to results. We have to report our results fair. The results have to be accurate. Um, So, for example, and what I mean by this, you might say to yourself, like, well, of course. But I've seen research articles. There's one that comes to mind in particular where the information that they're sharing is written in such a way that it sounds like there were positive results or results that were expected, but there really weren't. And so, for example, I read this study once, and if I can find it, I'll share it, where it talks about the data shows that they were approaching significance. So if you have significant data, it's something, your reliability statistic is going to show that you're greater than 90% likelihood of this result occurring, or greater than 95%. So like you'll see that reported as p is less than 0.10. So like the likelihood that this was to occur is less than 10% of the time would something otherwise occur, or a better statistic is p is less than 0.05. So 95% of the time this is going to be accurate. The likelihood that something else occurs is less than 5% of the time, or 0.01, a great statistic but hard to get. um, so but if you reach those levels and you can report p is less than 0.05, p is less than 0.01, that's a significant result. Approaching significance means that it's not significant. I mean, and it can be, speaking from personal experience, it can be frustrating because you'll be close. you know I can't report p is less than 0.05 if I have p, if my p score is 0.06 or something like that. That's still a really good result, but it's not significant in that case. If I was measuring, at that level of reliability. So, you know, so technically the way that was written is a little bit erroneous in my opinion. It obviously wasn't inaccurate enough for the journal to publish it, but because they did, but it stuck out to me. So it's our ethical responsibility as counselors to report our results accurately. um Publication and presentation, we want to talk about where previous work has come from. We obviously want to avoid plagiarism. We want to give credit to all contributors and however they contributed. So maybe someone is helping out on the study and they don't really quite meet qualifications for an authorship level where their name would be at the start of the study, but you can still acknowledge them in the study and name them in the study, for credit for what they did. Don't submit the same manuscript to different journals at the same time. uh do it one at a time. So like, and I mean, this makes sense to me because it would be nice to like shotgun approach, send this out to as many, this one study I did to as many journals as possible, because some of those journals are going to reject it. Others are going to want me to change it in a way that maybe I'm not comfortable with, or maybe I just don't like that. And then some other journals are going to take it, or take it with some corrections. Well, I have to do it one at a time, because if each of the journals decides they're going to publish it, that becomes problematic for the journals, because I have to either falsify and have my same study published in multiple journals, which is, an act of plagiarism in and of itself, essentially, because I'm using the same material and having it published in multiple sources. That's not how you do publishing. Um, Additionally, uh, it can be problematic to the journals, because even if I do it right and in the end decide that I'm only going to get it published in one article in one journal, I'm going to have to tell the other journal that I decline. And though that's my right to decline, I could have avoided it in the first place. The journal is planning out what articles are going to go into this issue, and I'm bogging down this process by me, conducting myself in an inappropriate way, taking advantage of the system so that I can get a leg up. Yeah. So I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty of each. I just wanted to highlight some areas for you. So again, I think that when we look at the code of ethics, it makes good sense. These are all things that we would want to do and avoid. doing, either do when it's appropriate or avoid doing when it's inappropriate. But I don't think it's something that would come up just in regular conversation and regular consideration of the work we do, because so much of our program is geared towards practice opportunities, and this is different than practice. But I do hope that you all are encouraged to engage in scholarship, because you're really going to be at the cutting edge of the work that we do. And so it would be helpful to represent those voices in our scholarship. All right. Hopefully, I will have some more videos for you in the future. If you have other questions, please let me know. I have some that are coming in from folks that I'm kind of keeping track of. I just wanted to hit this first because this is one of our first topics. Great job with the discussions. I'm going to be going through some of those as well. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and I hope this was helpful. Have a good time until next time I talk to you.